Welcome, Mr. Kubalasa, to this program. You are the Executive Director of the Malawi Economic Justice Network. Let's start by you giving us a summary of trends in this current government administration in terms of performance of the economy.
Thank you very much. I think maybe before I give that overview, I think I'll perhaps reflect on this question that we've all been talking about. What is it that is wrong with us as a nation, as an economy? We see different administrations coming in and going. And I think when we are looking at even these 2 years, you see that there are a few things I think that still continue to baffle everyone. The first one I would highlight is, when we look at the different promises that the different administrations make, including the current administration, the political campaigns. We campaign, somebody said, I think that was Festus Mohai, Botswana, former president. He said, we campaign in poetry, but we govern in prose. There's still something that doesn't seem to really add up. So we campaign and we promise the moon, and then it's time for doing the real work. You find that we're not really matching up with the different promises that we make. So that's one aspect that will still be one of the things that we can say I think we really have to get right.
How do you marry the influence of politics into our inability to act for the benefit of the economy?
I think this, unfortunately, this is it seems to be the biggest tragedy that we have. And I think sometimes maybe people, we jump and say, draw a conclusion that politicians are not helping us. Sometimes a statement like that, somebody can argue against that, because maybe it would be like a blanket statement. But I think when we break it down, it's these things. You find that where the rationale of doing certain things, the justification of doing certain things, where the economic sense, is being overpowered, by the political sense, and you see a lot of those. You see, things, some decisions and some investments, some policy direction that we do, favoring more the politics and favoring more, the issue of maybe this will get us the votes. And we've had so many examples of those. I don't need to go into those. You see, and these are the things that are at play that haven't really helped us over the past years. We can give all those examples of the different administrations that we've had, and they will never help us if we continue, like this. So that's the insanity that people talk about, that we still want to continue the same way. Without learning, without drawing all those lessons.
But what's the way out? 52 years of independence, we're talking about same problems and we're making circles on the same spot.
You see, this is what is very frustrating, and for stakeholders, top of stakeholders like us, civil society, we've tried to be very, very consistent, the evidence-based policy, advocacy, evidence-based policy making that should really make sure that whatever we are seeing is really informing the different investments and the different priorities that we're making. That will be the only way out. So let's remove ourselves from, the bad politics that will obviously, or that is obviously breeding the bad economics. We need the good politics that is, in sync with the good economics that we're supposed to be. Where the rationality of, Malawi first. We are Malawi as a nation first before we are the different, the different hats that we're wearing. Before we are, party X or administration X or Y. Let's consider the Malawi first, because all of us, if the Malawi ticks, all of us will thrive, and people will clap hands for us that things are moving. So this is where I think we really need to, I don't know why, but as we speak, you know, the motivation, you know, for becoming very frustrated, I'm seeing that motivation being very, very high in a lot of key stakeholders, including the technocrats.
Have we resigned to faith?
We are seeing slowly and steadily, which is very, very tragic. Slowly but steadily, you see people resigning to this fate that I think maybe this is how things will continue to play out. Maybe this is how Malawi was cut out to be, which is not true. So I think no matter what, we really need to, whether we are in the civil society, you see those levels of frustrations increasing. People, you know, kind of like giving up. In the citizens, the Malawians, you still see some of those elements, you know, the levels of frustration, because they really don't see the people-centeredness in the different policy directions or in the different initiatives. You see the overriding factor remaining political, but not so much for the people.
But where exactly are we getting it wrong? Because almost all our leaders, political leaders especially, the president inclusive, are talking about us doing business unusual.
You see, I think we need to continue that searching. Business unusual, it doesn't have just to be in the words, in the rhetoric, in the song of singing business unusual. We need to really match, you know, that rhetoric with the action. And you know, you
seem to suggest to me that you don't see that in action.
We're not seeing much. We're not seeing much action of all of this. You know, the same. We will be talking about the reform agenda. You see, it still remains. You know, I think you still see a few things still dying down, and we are getting back to some of this status quo. So we have to really gang up and jack up if we really wish to see things happening differently. I mean, these are the things, but it doesn't have to take only one individual. I mean, we need to say, I think enough is enough as Malawi, and the way we do things, this is not helping us, and it hasn't helped us for the past 52 years. Yes, there have been some glimmers of, you know, hope here and there, but perhaps we need to rise up and say, can we really do these things, you know, the right way? I mean, that's the only way we should. And we don't have to wait for the tragedy to befall us. You know, God forbid. We don't need that. You know, sometimes people make some of these statements that, no, Malawians, I think we are still sleeping. I think we are, you know, we can't be like Rwanda, because Rwanda, I think they woke up from, you know, a very tragic experience. God forbid, we don't need such tragic experiences. We can learn from all these other countries and do things, you know, the right way. So far, the politics hasn't helped us. Yes, the politicians, they speak in the name of doing it for the people of Malawi. Everybody says so. But we know it just becomes a lip service largely. Can we build this momentum to really do things for the people of Malawi? We don't need the Malawians to rise and do something as was started maybe in July 20. You know, we don't need such, you know, such revolutionary and tragic, you know, things to happen to really jolt us into action. We can do certain things, you know, the right way without having to wait for that. So for me, you know, that's why I've been one of those passionate believers that a reform process should be something that should really get everybody of us supporting the politicians. It's not just about the politics of the party X. It should be about the nation of Malawi learning from where we come from.
But to talk about the reforms agenda, what is your comprehension in terms of how different is it from what we've talked about in the past, like the Vision 2020, for example?
You know, I think the reforms drive. There's been some infusion of a different element of political will in this drive, in this attempt. I think that maybe we haven't really seen in the others. The other maybe 79 attempts and some of these other interventions. But I think what is still not as clearly coming out is, you know, the connectivity to a broader, you know, broader support, you know, wholesale support of the key stakeholders, all of this buying in, all of us buying in and saying this is it, and we don't want anybody to tamper with this process.
You seem to suggest that there's some skepticism within the system about their own agenda.
I think there's something that is you know, resisting. There's something that is I don't know what it is really, but there's some force that seems to really be, you know, prevailing against this broader trend of reforming and whatever. And then slowly this is becoming just one of those other attempts, which will really be, I think it will be so sad for this to really feel like that. So if we can identify these and, you know, connect and recharge that, that inertia for some of these things to really work as they should, you know, without looking at party X, party Y, or how much time, or the next elections, you know, looking at just Malawi and the potential that we have. You know, we're talking of hunger. Hunger is an opportunity, you know, for us to do certain things, for us to kickstart the productivity that is supposed to be there. We are not as productive. The productivity is almost, you know, at zero. We have all this idle land, all these farms or whatever. This is an opportunity for us to do something, but we don't really seem to be seeing that action. To tap into, you know, the factors of production that we have, the land that we have, some capital. We still have some capital. We don't. It's not like we are completely at zero. We have some capital, but how are we allocating it and how are we redirecting it so that we, you know, we get some things going? So in a way that builds the momentum towards these results that we should be seeing. So, you know, there are a number of things that are still seen to be, you know, all over the place. We have to find a way of really harnessing this.
The international community has really been very interested in the reforms agenda in this country. Talk about the issue of public financial management concerns. Do you think we are doing the correct things? Are we responding accordingly?
I think the public finance management system is one of those very critical areas of our system, which has all these institutions that we should really see working. I think there's some element that we are seeing from the angle of the public finance management systems. I think there's some very good things that are being introduced that we are seeing. I think there's been some consistent action of sorts. I think we need to give some credit where it's due. Talk of from the Ministry of Finance. We've seen the Secretary of Treasury and the team. I think they're trying to put their foot down on a number of things. I think this is something that we need, and I think this is one of those, perhaps those few elements that in this reform agenda, I think if we build on the momentum and sustain them, we can see things getting somewhere. But obviously, they're not enough. I mean, we need to do a lot more of that. I'll give an example of, you know, we've been talking of the business as usual, you know, in the budgeting process. You know, a year comes, a year go. You know, the financial years come and they go. There's a tendency of looking at, well, I think we're at the end of 30th of June, then let's forget about this. Now our eyes are on the next fiscal year and the next budget. You know, and then we haven't really had that time of interrogating the actuals, you know, these expenditures, what has really been happening before we give you more, before we open a new list of the next budget. Yeah. So yes, you see institutions like ours, we do the budget tracking, you know, but it's been far removed from the actual, you know, mainstream process. So we've been struggling to get it into that mainstream. The reports, we do them, but how do they inform this process? So there's been that, you know, outcry. Parliamentarians, they're talking about that, they're crying about that. The Budget and Finance Committee is crying about that. We haven't really subjected, you know, the expenditure reports, if any, to scrutiny so that we reconcile. So these resources that came, the revenue that we had, and that was dispersed, you know, how was it really utilized? So that's an element. And I think one area that I was commenting the Minister of Finance was, you know, they are now beginning to, you know, with the noise that we are continuing to make, they are now beginning to say, no, I think we need the returns. If you don't give us the returns, if you don't give us these reports showing us how you've used a particular disbursement, then you're not getting the funding for the next month until you give it. And then we've seen an outcry from the ministries, departments and agencies because they are used, you know, to the business as usual, where they, you know, a month has gone, we're given an allocation. Another month comes, we'll be given an allocation, whether we give a report or not. So we are moving away from that. That's an element, I think, that needs to be, you know, supported, that needs to be scaled up, and this is one of those elements and components in the reform agenda for the ministry, for example.
That's about budget tracking.
Yes.
But then before that, there is the budget preparation. How much of the contribution you make to preparing budget is accommodated in the actual documents?
Exactly. This is an area that I think we still are continuing to push, and I think talking to the minister and his team during the budget consultations, you know, these are the things that, as Megan was saying, we've been. I keep tab of all the budget submissions that we've been making for the past 11 years. Year in, year out, almost these, you know, they remain very relevant and very valid. Sometimes you don't really see how this, you know, you don't really see this in the budget, you can't trace. So this submission that we've made, what difference or which one has found its way into the national budget? I know, you know, as they say, I know logically, practically, not everything will find its way in there, but we need to be moving in that direction because this is supposed to be a people's budget. And the people are, you know, passionately, you know, believing that they are helping government make a people's budget, a budget that will be people-centered. So when they make their submissions, I think it will only be fair and proper to continue motivating them when they see their input, you know, being reflected in the budget. Whether it's the time the budget is being passed, or it's the time the mid-year budget review is being done, or even when the budget is actually being formulated, you know, during the compilation of the estimates. So those are some of the elements that we continue, and we will continue to be very patient in spite of the frustrations. But we know giving up is not an option. We know that we might be frustrated, but we have, I think, enough and thick shock absorbers, and we will continue to draw as much energy to remain vigilant and still soldier on. And this is what we are, you know, I talked of, you know, many Malawians, many stakeholders, including the technocrats, you know, beginning to give up and accept the status quo. We cannot accept the status quo. That would be a tragedy that we don't want to fall into. So that's the inspiration and the encouragement that I would say. Let's soldier on and let's continue do the right things. Let's continue support those critical things like the reform agenda. It doesn't have to die a natural death like all the others have because one or two or three are not comfortable with it. Let's support this and let's make sure that we keep our eyes on the ball, and the ball in this case is the results that we want to see, which is the economy going in the direction that we should be seeing it going.
I was talking to a key diplomat in the country a few days ago, and he was telling me, look, everybody in your country is saying the right things. The presidency, the civil society, the opposition, the business community, they're saying the right things, but they're not doing the right thing.
You know,
would you agree with him?
I agree entirely. You know, we've had such frustrated talks with the diplomats, with the private sector, amongst ourselves in civil society, with the government officials, you know, and this just you know, highlights the fact that we are before. These are only hats that we are wearing, the hat of the president, but at heart is a Malawian. So we need to be Malawians first. As a civil society, it's only a hat. As a private sector, it's only a hat or a robe. But at heart, we are Malawians, and it's Malawi first. So these are the frustrations that we are hearing, and unfortunately, because the action will have to be led, you know, by certain sections of the society, and it's the government. And in this case, when we're looking at the government, there are those arms, but there's the executive, which is charged with the responsibility of, you know, taking the actions forward, and then the rest of us support. So that's why I think the blame squarely goes, you know, to the executive. But there in the executive, you find that the senior, you know, government officials or the technocrats, they might want to do certain things, but you see that it's the politicians who are wielding so much power, and a lot of their power is, you know, directed, you know, towards the wrong premise, or towards maybe a much narrower premise, which is the premise of votes, or premise of the next election, you know, where we're being locked up in the short cycles, you know, of looking at the next generation. So we're getting obsessed with the next general election instead of getting obsessed with the next generation of Malawians, which is much more of terms of, you look at 50 years going forward. Where do we want to be in 50 years as Malawi, instead of where do we want to be in 5 years, the next 5 years. So I think we should be leaning more towards that 50 years. So those frustrations, you know, they are very common amongst all of us, because we are Malawians at heart. And maybe this is something that should maybe compel us now to begin to look at this Malawi, you know, a much, you know, longer perspective of this Malawi that we all love. Maybe in the next 10 years, some politicians will not be politicians anymore. They will not be, you know, in the administration as wearing the same hats that they are wearing today. You know, so they need to be concerned a little more about that Malawi, where there will be just a Malawian and not just a president, or not just wearing a particular hat. And maybe this is what will trigger. So we will let the experts that we've put, you know, to manage our affairs, be it in the finance, be it in the agriculture, be it, these are the people who know, because we paid them for the skills and the knowledge that they have, PhD, masters, or whatever you name it, the experience. You know, these are the experts. Let them do what they know best. You know, politicians, let us do what, you know, we know best as well, and but leave you know, the professionals to do what they're supposed to do. The central bank, the same thing. So the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, let the experts do what they're supposed to do without any political influence, and perhaps we can salvage. And maybe these frustrations, maybe in a few years' time, we'll be talking about a different Malawi, and then we won't be seeing a lot of these frustrations. But I agree entirely how frustrating it has been for the diplomat, as well as for any local ordinary Malawian, or even all these other.
One would probably ask, then, what is the role of the Malawi Economic Justice Network? Where do you fit in? How are you helping out in this situation?
That's a very good question, and $1 million one. I think it speaks to the core of our existence as a network, and the role that we think we're entitled to playing out as a stakeholder. You see, primarily, this is where we look at Malawians that are empowered. How best do we empower the Malawians? Malawians are the best economists. Economists, maybe who might have not gone into class, but they know how to make the most of the little resources that they have. And economics is simply a science of choices. And I think you can't find a better person who knows how to juggle the little, you know, resources over so many competing needs. So for us, what we've been doing is purely that empowerment process, so that these informed and empowered Malawians can know where to knock, and can know with confidence that they are the bosses. They are the bosses who put all these authorities in power on trust to manage their affairs. And if certain things are going, whether they're going well or not, they have a right to, ask, to be given feedback. Why are things going well, and how can we continue doing that? And why are things not going so well, and how can we reverse that so that we remain being people-centered in whatever policy. So imagine, and the work that we've been doing for the past over a decade now, we're talking of for the past 14, 15 years now, is purely that, and it's been a learning curve, so we're getting even better and much more professional. So we are building these strong social accountability systems where Malawians are confident, they are empowered, and they ask questions, to their duty bearers over the different, affairs of their economy. So I'll give an example. For example, we are talking about, we don't see as much action, and we are exactly focusing on that. So how do we segment this action to make sense with the action that we're supposed to see in the different sectors?
How exactly are you trying to achieve that? How exactly are you trying to job the citizen?
One example is, the economic literacy and budget accountability, sessions that we hold. These are, maybe for lack of better words, we can just call them capacity building. You see, but it's on the economy, and they are applying what they see happening every day. How do they see a road in a particular community or in a village? Where does this road come from? So we trace it all the way into the national budget, and we trace it all the way into where government is getting their resources, from their taxes and from the loans. So this is something that we try to unpack in a very, very simple manner, because these are people who are very wise and they know.
But in winding, we as a country are in the middle of a big problem. There's hunger in this country, and well, unprecedented in
like never ever before.
Like never before.
I'm sure like never ever before, because we haven't heard of figures like 6.5 million or more,
almost half,
which is half the population.
Right.
We've heard that there's been hunger before, but I think this is a new high in terms of the magnitude.
And the projections are that the factors that brought about, some of the factors that brought about the problem could be ongoing, meaning the problem could prolong. Where to our country, economy-wise?
Yeah, and I think, again, moving on from the question of the land reforms and the dynamics around it, but there's this other very imminent issue of the climate change, which is something very, very, very serious. And I think we really need to look at that with the maybe double the seriousness, if not triple the seriousness that we've paid it. Because as an agro-based economy, our economy is directly hit by the climate change, in which case I think we really need to look at, or to listen very carefully with what the experts around the environmental and natural resource management are saying, because that's another area. I think you and I, and we go into the villages, you see people don't take the issue of planting trees seriously, the issue of conservation or whatever. We don't, and yet this is the time we are seeing, I think the water levels are up to our necks and even higher. And I think what will take us, what is it going to take us to take this issue very seriously? Because you can actually see that time is ticking. This is another ticking, another time bomb. Yes, we're talking of the rains, the rain patterns have changed. We can still adapt. I've seen people who are, even with the same amount of rains, the maize, the shortest varieties, it takes 60 days. 60 days, you can still plant, and the rains are coming even for more than the 60 days. You can still plant and harvest. So the timing, issue of the timing, when you plant and when you do what and whatever, the agricultural extension, this is very, very crucial, because we've seen people cultivating and they've harvested even huge, bountiful harvests from the very same, rain patterns. So I think it's a mix of all of these, but we really need to structure this properly from the micro level of the household. Let's make very informed decisions, very nice choices, and it's these choices that will make us really become self-sustaining. We'll have a lot of food. We don't need to buy. So that's the productivity that we're talking about. If I produce maize, my neighbor produces maize, whatever, it means the supply is higher of maize, of that. The rearing of chickens, all of this is adding to the food security. We used to have chicken pens in our houses not too long ago. We didn't have to buy chickens because we knew simply if we wanted chicken, we would just go in the chicken pen and grab one and kill it, and then you have your lunch. Now it's not happening anymore. So these are some of the things that are conspiring against our survival, and I think we need to go back to the basics in a number of things and remain being as informed as.
That was Mr. Daliso Kubalasa, the Executive Director of the Malawi Economic Justice Network. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.